The summer of 1983 arrived with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. The days were scorching, relentless, and filled with the hum of suburban monotony. At 35, I found myself lounging poolside, a gin and tonic sweating in my hand. My wife, Jessica, 5 years my junior, was stretched out on a chaise lounge nearby, her oversized Ray-Bans mirroring the shimmering blue of the water. Her high-cut bikini was daring, leaving little to the imagination, and yet, it was the norm for her effortless charm. Phil Collins' voice floated from the boombox, the unofficial anthem of our seemingly idyllic life. "Babe, can you get me another spritzer?" Her voice carried lazily across the deck. Reluctantly, I got up, walking over to the shiny new bar we'd installed, a chrome and neon spectacle of suburban extravagance. As I mixed her drink, the ice tinkling in the glass, I wondered how I'd ended up as Robert Winslow, corporate executive, husband to a stunning wife, and owner of a pool straight out of a soap opera. It looked perfect on the surface, but perfection can be deceiving. "Here you go, Jess," I said, handing her the drink and searching her face for a trace of the woman I had married. All I received in return was a distracted smile before she turned back to her magazine. Settling into my chair again, I swirled the ice in my glass, lost in thought. Ever notice how something can appear flawless while it's quietly unraveling? That was our summer. The cracks were there, subtle at first, but spreading steadily beneath the polished exterior. The wood-paneled station wagon, once a symbol of family adventures, sat unused in the driveway. Inside, the new VCR blinked, 12 o'clock from the entertainment center, another detail I'd neglected to fix. Time seemed irrelevant, slipping through our fingers no matter what we did. "Rob?" Jessica's voice pulled me back. "Did you even hear me?" "Sorry," I mumbled. "What did you say?" She pushed her sunglasses down to shoot me a look. "I said we should have people over this weekend. Maybe barbecue, make it a thing." "Sure," I replied, my thoughts already drifting to work. "I'll pick up some steaks." Her nod was absent, her enthusiasm dulled. When had that changed? The phone's shrill ring broke through the humid stillness. Grateful for the excuse, I headed inside to answer. "Winslow residence?" "Rob, my man!" Dave from the office greeted me. "Hey, about the Jameson account. Can you swing by early tomorrow?" From the window, I could see Jessica lying on her stomach, her bikini top undone. She glanced up, caught my gaze, and gave a small wave. I should have gone back out. Should have made an effort. Instead, I said, "Yeah, Dave, I'll be there." When I returned, Jessica was dozing, her back rising and falling with each breath. For a moment, I watched her, trying to remember the last time we truly connected. The boombox shifted to "Owner of a Lonely Heart," and I let out a wry laugh at the irony. Grabbing my briefcase, I spread out paperwork on the patio table. Work had somehow become my escape from home, not the other way around. "Are you working?" Jessica asked, startled to see me with reports spread before me. "Just getting ahead on a few things," I replied without looking up. Her silence stretched until she finally said, "You know what would be nice? If my husband actually spent time with me on a weekend." "Come on, Jess," I snapped, irritation flaring. "You know how important this is. I'm doing it for us." "Are you?" Her voice was quiet but cutting, the sunglasses concealing the accusation in her eyes. The following weekend, I was buried in quarterly reports when the gate creaked open. Expecting Jessica, I glanced up and instead saw a young man, maybe 20 or so, saunter in with feathered hair and cut-off jeans. "Yo, Mr. Winslow," he called cheerfully. "I'm Gary, the new pool guy." "Pool guy?" I repeated, frowning. "We have a pool guy?" "Jessica hired me," he explained, already heading toward the pump house. "Said the old guy wasn't cutting it." Jessica appeared moments later, her spandex-clad figure glowing with post-aerobics energy. "Oh, good. You've met Gary," she said with a bright smile. "Isn't he great?" There was something in the way she interacted with him, an ease, a spark of liveliness that caught my attention. "Can we talk?" I asked, leading her aside. "What is it, Rob?" she asked, her tone exasperated. "When did we decide to hire a pool boy?" I questioned. "I thought I was handling that." She rolled her eyes. "When's the last time you actually cleaned the pool? Gary's professional. Plus, everyone on the block uses him." I stared at her, words bubbling up that I didn't say. Instead, she walked off with a parting shot. "Don't work too hard." Over the weeks, subtle changes became impossible to ignore. Jessica spent more time by the pool, her swimsuits growing increasingly daring. She laughed at Gary's jokes, her energy radiating in ways I hadn't seen in years. I told myself it was harmless, just her being her usual friendly self. The doubts had been festering for weeks, subtle but unrelenting. I'd noticed the lingering glances, the abrupt silences when I walked into a room, and those shared laughs that seemed just a bit too intimate. One evening, I came home earlier than usual and found Jessica and Gary at the backyard bar. They were leaned in close, each holding a beer, their heads tilted toward one another as if sharing a secret. "Oh, hey, honey," Jessica exclaimed, her tone overly cheerful. "You're back early. Gary was just telling me about this wild party he went to last night." I nodded stiffly, my eyes flicking to Gary, who avoided looking at me directly. "Sounds interesting," I muttered, before heading inside to change. Later that night, as we lay in bed, the unease gnawed at me until I finally spoke. "Jess, is there something going on between you and Gary?" She turned to face me, her expression caught between disbelief and irritation. "Are you serious, Rob?" "I'm just saying," I began, choosing my words carefully. "You two seem pretty close lately." Jessica laughed, the sound hollow and forced. "He's just a kid, Rob. And, in case you've forgotten, I'm a married woman." I wanted to believe her, I truly did. But when she rolled over, effectively ending the conversation, the chill in my stomach lingered. Something wasn't right, and deep down, I knew it. The next day, I decided to keep a closer eye on things. It was Saturday, and I set up my work on the patio, determined to observe without appearing too obvious. Jessica was by the pool as usual, radiating charm in her skimpy bikini. When Gary arrived, the atmosphere shifted. "Looking great, Mrs. Winslow," Gary called with a teasing whistle. Jessica giggled, striking a playful pose. "Oh, stop! You'll make me blush." I gritted my teeth, pretending to focus on the quarterly reports in front of me. The flirtation wasn't subtle. In fact, it felt like I was invisible. Every laugh, every casual brush of their hands, it was all a glaring reminder of the distance that had grown between Jessica and me. When Gary finished his tasks, I expected him to leave. Instead, he dropped onto a lounge chair and grabbed a beer from our cooler. "Mind if I hang out for a bit, Mr. W? It's brutal out there." I managed a tight-lipped smile, mumbling something non-committal. Jessica, on the other hand, was in her element, regaling him with stories from her college days, her laughter ringing out like a bell. I couldn't bear it any longer. Excusing myself, I retreated into the kitchen, the growing anger like a hot coal in my chest. Pouring myself a drink, I stared out the window, watching them huddle closer. Jessica's hand lingered on Gary's arm as she laughed at something he said, her energy electric in a way I hadn't seen in months. The sight sent a sharp pang through me, a mix of anger, betrayal, and something far darker. The shrill ring of the phone snapped me out of my spiraling thoughts. I picked up, barely registering Dave's voice on the other end. "Rob, you there, man?" "Yeah, I'm here," I replied flatly. "We've got an issue with the Johnson account. Can you come in tomorrow?" My eyes drifted back to the pool. Jessica sat alone now, her earlier energy drained. For once, work didn't seem like the answer. "Sorry, Dave, I can't. Family stuff." There was a surprised pause. "You sure? You never turned down work." "I'm sure," I said, the decision surprising even me. "I need to spend some time with Jessica." After hanging up, I stepped outside, and Jessica looked up, startled. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I replied, settling into the chair beside her. "I was thinking, maybe tomorrow we could spend the day together, just us." For a moment, the old Jessica surfaced, her eyes brightening. "Really? You don't have work?" "Nope," I said with a small smile. "I'm all yours." She reached over and took my hand. "I'd like that." As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe we could fix things. Maybe it wasn't too late. But later that night, the phone rang softly, just once, before it stopped. I shouldn't have checked. God, I wish I hadn't. Cracking the bedroom door, I heard her hushed voice down the hall. "Gary, you can't call here. I know, but we have to be careful. Look, just give it time, okay?" My stomach twisted as I eased the door shut and slid back into bed, feigning sleep. Jessica slipped in moments later, her movements careful and quiet. My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. By morning, the fragile hope I'd felt had soured into something colder, sharper. As we moved through breakfast in strained silence, I formed a plan. "Honey," I began casually, "I was thinking we could invite Gary over for drinks tonight. To thank him for all his hard work." Jessica froze for a moment, her hand faltering as she poured orange juice. "Oh, that's nice of you," I smiled, keeping my tone light. "You two seem to get along so well. I thought it was time I got to know him better." She nodded, her movement stiff. "Sure, I'll let him know." As she disappeared to get dressed, I stared out at the pool. The water's surface was calm, but beneath it, a storm was brewing. By tonight, everything would change, and I'd make sure I came out on top. The patio lights hummed to life as dusk blanketed the backyard. I stood at the bar stand, pouring drinks with the precision of someone grasping for control. Gin and tonic for Jessica, a beer for Gary, and a scotch, neat, for myself. The clinking ice echoed the tension that buzzed in the air. "He's late," Jessica remarked, her tone neutral, though her fingers fiddled with the rim of her glass. I glanced at my watch. 7:15 p.m.? "Maybe he decided not to come," I replied, the edge in my voice undeniable. Jessica's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before I could answer, the gate creaked open. Gary strolled in, exuding his usual carefree attitude, his Hawaiian shirt hanging open to reveal an oiled chest. He grinned, as if walking into a party, not a storm brewing under the surface. "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. W," he greeted, holding up a hand. "Sorry I'm late. Had to make myself presentable, I forced a chuckle, passing him a beer. "No worries. Glad you made it." We took our places around the patio furniture, the three of us locked in a strained triangle of forced smiles and fake pleasantries. Jessica's laughter was too bright, her responses too quick. Gary's gaze lingered just a moment too long on her legs. And me, I sat there nursing my scotch, watching, every muscle in my body taut with barely contained rage. "So, Gary," I said during a lull in the conversation, keeping my voice casual, "got a girlfriend?" His eyes flicked to Jessica for the briefest moment before he answered. "Nah, man. Playing the field? Why settle down when you're young?" I nodded slowly, taking a measured sip. "Makes sense, but sometimes the right woman comes along and changes everything. Isn't that right, Jess?" Jessica stiffened, her smile faltering. "Sure," she said, her voice clipped. "Anyone need more ice?" As she rose to refill her glass, Gary's gaze followed her every move. Something inside me snapped. I began, my tone deceptively calm. "I thought I heard the phone ring late last night. Did you hear it, Jess?" She froze, the ice scoop slipping from her hand and clattering onto the floor. "What? No, I didn't hear anything." I turned my attention to Gary, whose carefree demeanor was cracking. "How about you? Make any late-night calls recently?" The atmosphere shifted, the tension palpable. Gary hesitated, his grin fading. "Look, Mr. Winslow, I don't know what you're—" "Oh, I think you do," I interrupted, standing slowly. "In fact, I think you both know exactly what I'm talking about." Jessica stepped between us, her voice trembling but firm. "Robert, stop this. Gary, maybe you should go." But I wasn't finished. Months of simmering anger boiled over, spilling into my words. "No, let's get everything out in the open, right here, right now." Gary raised his hands, his confidence evaporating. "Hey man, I don't want any trouble. I'll just—" "Sit down." My voice was low, deadly. Gary obeyed, sinking into his chair with a nervous glance at Jessica, who looked on the verge of panic. "Robert, please," she said, her voice strained. "You're drunk. Let's just call it a night." "I heard you, Jess," I said, my voice quiet but cutting. "Last night. On the phone. With him." The color drained from her face. Gary sat frozen, his beer untouched. "So, here's how this is going to work," I continued, my tone steady despite the storm raging inside me. "You're both going to tell me the truth. Now." Jessica's fear hardened into anger. "And what if we don't? What are you going to do, Robert? Intimidate me like you intimidate everyone else?" Her words hit harder than I expected, and for a moment I faltered. "What the hell are you talking about?" Jessica's eyes burned with fury. "You checked out of this marriage long before any of this. When's the last time you really looked at me? Really saw me? All you care about is work, your damn reports and deadlines." Gary shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearing his throat. Maybe I should... Shut up! Jessica and I barked in unison, our shared anger startling even us. I turned back to her, my voice rising. So that justifies sneaking around with the pool boy? Jessica's voice cracked as tears filled her eyes. Nothing happened, Robert. Yes, I talked to him. Yes, I flirted. Because it felt good to be noticed again. Gary stood abruptly, his face pale. Mr. Winslow, I swear, nothing serious happened. I'll leave. You'll never see me again. I rounded on him, my fists clenched. You expect me to believe that? After everything I've seen? Jessica let out a hollow laugh. There, Robert. Are you happy now? Your precious pride is intact. God forbid anyone think your perfect life isn't as perfect as it seems. The weight of her words hung in the air. My anger deflated, replaced by a hollow ache. Is that how you see us, Jess? Is that what we've become? Her shoulders sagged, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know anymore. Sensing his chance, Gary muttered an apology and bolted, leaving us alone amidst the ruins of our marriage. The silence was deafening. Jessica's mascara streaked down her face, her expression a mixture of anger and despair. Without another word, she turned and fled into the house. The glass door slammed shut, the sound cutting through the oppressive stillness. I stood there, numb, staring after her. The life I thought I had built was crumbling, and I didn't know if I could save it, or if I even wanted to. Mechanically, I moved to the bar stand, pouring a drink with shaking hands, vodka, tomato juice, a splash of Worcestershire sauce. As I stirred the Bloody Mary, a bitter laugh escaped my lips. Fitting, I muttered. Halfway through the drink, I realized I was crying. Silent, bitter tears for the life I had lost, or perhaps never really had. Inside, a light flickered on in the bedroom. Jessica's silhouette moved, likely packing a bag. I wanted to stop her, to say something, anything, but I couldn't. Instead, I sat there, alone with my thoughts, as the weight of the evening pressed down like an unbearable burden. Dear listeners, we hope you're enjoying this story and the many others on our channel. If you like our content, we'd be delighted if you subscribe to our channel. For you, it's just a small click, but for us, it means the world and helps us create even more captivating stories. Thank you for being part of our journey. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the story. The sun barely kissed the horizon when I woke to find Jessica gone. She had left behind nothing but a hastily scrawled note on the kitchen counter. I'm going to my sister's for a while. We both need space to think. Please don't call me. I read it 3 times, each word searing into me like a brand. Then, with deliberate force, I crushed the paper into a ball and hurled it into the trash. Space to think? I didn't need space. I didn't need time. What I needed was an end to this chaos, and the only person left to blame was Gary. Jessica's departure stung, but more than that, it enraged me. The house felt suffocating, the pool mocking me with its still reflective surface. The anger surged, toward Jessica, toward myself, but mostly toward Gary. His smug smile, the way he ogled her, the secretive phone calls, all of it churned inside me like a firestorm. By 7 a.m., I was already out of the house, too restless to follow my usual routine. The office provided no escape. The mountain of paperwork on my desk was nothing but a blur. My thoughts circled Gary, feeding my rage until the idea took root. I picked up my phone and dialed. You need to come by this evening, I said without preamble, my tone clipped and cold. I have the payment for your work. Gary hesitated. Sure, Mr. Winslow. What time? 9, I said, hanging up before he could respond further. The plan crystallized as I set the phone down, my mind now consumed by the resolve of what I had to do. The backyard was unnervingly tranquil that evening, the patio lights casting a soft glow on the pool and the sealed bottle of vodka resting on the table. The gentle hum of the filter was the only sound. It was almost too peaceful for what I had planned. Right on time, Gary arrived, dressed in his usual carefree style, though his demeanor was noticeably subdued. His eyes flicked to the house, wary. Thanks for coming, I said, my voice devoid of emotion, as I handed him an envelope stuffed with cash. This is for the work you've done. Gary accepted it cautiously, his gaze searching my face. Thanks, Mr. Winslow. I was planning to wrap up the pool soon. There's just a few things. Show me what's left, I interrupted, my tone sharp. Gary hesitated, then nodded and led the way toward the pool equipment. The filter needs a flush, he began, pointing at the pump. I was going to take care of it tomorrow, but I stopped listening. My eyes drifted to the vodka bottle on the patio table. My hand twitched. The decision wasn't conscious. It was instinctive. I picked up the bottle and approached quietly, each step measured, my pulse roaring in my ears. In one swift motion, I brought the bottle down with all the strength I could muster. The dull, sickening crack echoed through the still night. Gary stumbled forward, collapsing to his knees by the pool side. He let out a weak groan, but I didn't stop. I swung again and again, until his body slumped, motionless, against the concrete. The bottle slipped from my hand, slick with blood. My breath came in ragged gasps, but the fury remained, simmering just beneath the surface. I stared at Gary's lifeless form, his head tilted awkwardly to the side, the pool's serene surface now spattered with crimson. Calmly, I dragged his body to the edge and tipped him into the water. The pristine blue turned murky, the crimson threads swirling like smoke. The irony struck me, dark and bitter. Returning to the patio, I picked up the vodka bottle and poured its contents into the pool, watching the liquid mix with the blood. A squeeze of lemon, a pinch of salt, a dash of Worcestershire sauce. I completed the grotesque tableau before tossing the empty bottle into the water. It bobbed beside Gary's lifeless form, a macabre punctuation mark to the scene. I sat back in my chair, my voice steady but devoid of life, as I muttered to myself, "Looks like tonight's special is a bloody Gary." I can't pinpoint exactly when everything started to feel so pointless. Maybe it was the moment I walked into this retirement home. The stale air, the faint reek of disinfectant, it hit me like a slap. No warm welcome, no family helping me settle in. Just an empty room waiting for me. 40 years in prison, and this is where I ended up. Now, I sit in the same chair every day in the common room. The others talk about their grandkids, their vacations, their lives. I keep quiet. What could I add to their conversations? They still have their stories, while mine ended that night by the pool. Gary doesn't haunt me the way people think he might. His face, his stupid Hawaiian shirts, and the nervous glance he gave me before it all spiraled out of control, they don't linger in my mind. It's not Gary I regret. It's everything else. Jessica, the house, the job, all of it unraveled by one impulsive, irreversible decision. The neighbor saw everything that night. I didn't know at the time. She called the cops, and before I could clean up the mess, I heard sirens closing in. They found me sitting on the patio, staring into the pool, my hands sticky with blood and vodka. The trial was quick. Open and shut. Gary was dead. I killed him, no debate there. The prosecutor made me out to be some cold, calculating murderer, someone who planned every step. Did I? Maybe. Maybe not. It doesn't matter. The jury didn't bother with the nuances. 40 years. That was their verdict. Prison wasn't like the movies. No dramatic fights, no chaotic riots. At least not where I was. It was silence. Endless stretches of silence broken only by the jingle of keys or the slam of metal doors. Time dissolved in that place. Days bleeding into each other until the idea of a future felt like a cruel joke. Jessica stopped visiting after the first year. She sent a letter saying she couldn't do it anymore, that she needed to move on. The divorce papers followed not long after. I didn't fight it. What was the point? She'd already left long before Gary. I just didn't want to see it. Sometimes I think about her, wonder what she's doing now, if she ever talks about me, about what happened. Probably not. I was just a bad chapter in her life, one she's no doubt erased. When they let me out, there was no one waiting. No friends, no family, nothing. Just a bus ticket to this place and a bag of ill-fitting clothes. After 40 years behind bars, the world outside felt too big, too fast, like stepping into a foreign country I didn't recognize. Now, I'm just another old man in this home, waiting out the clock. The nurses are polite, but they don't pry. They don't know who I was, what I did. To them, I'm just a name on a clipboard, a patient to check on. Maybe that's all I am now. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that moment by the pool, the vodka bottle in my hand. I wonder what would have happened if I'd let it go, if I'd walked away instead. Would anything have been different? Would Jessica have stayed? Would I have a life worth living now? I'll never know. Those questions gnaw at me, but they're pointless. The truth is, my life ended the moment I swung that bottle. Everything that followed, the trial, the prison, this retirement home, is just the fallout of a man who destroyed himself. The sun sets outside, the long shadows creeping across the common room. I glance at the others, their laughter and chatter filling the space. They still have time, still have stories worth sharing. Me? My story's been over for decades. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't worth telling in the first place. Thank you for watching and hope to see you soon. Have a great day.